The space station looked like a giant metal flower floating among the stars. Jin Taiman pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and watched it grow larger as they approached. This was Harmony's Edge, the neutral meeting place where humans would have their first real talk with alien beings. Taiman felt nervous but excited. He was 28 years old and had worked hard to become an engineer. Now he was part of Earth's diplomatic team. His job was to talk about trade routes and sharing resources between Earth and the aliens called the Ethereal Coalition. "Look at that," said Park So-ra, the senior ambassador. She pointed at the docking bay where several alien ships waited. The ships were beautiful, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own light. "Those are coalition vessels. I hear their technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours." Taiman nodded but kept looking at his data tablet. He had spent months studying trade patterns and resource maps. Numbers and facts made more sense to him than worrying about how advanced the aliens might be. The transport docked with a soft thud. Lee Do-hyun, their military advisor, stood up first. "Remember, everyone, we represent all of humanity here. These aliens have never met our species before. First impressions matter." Kim Nari, their cultural expert, adjusted her formal clothes. "The coalition values beauty and mental powers above everything else. They judge people by how they look and whether they can read minds. We need to be respectful." The airlock opened with a hiss. Cool, clean air flowed in, carrying a strange but pleasant smell like flowers and metal. The group walked through a long corridor with walls that seemed to shift colors as they passed. The main meeting hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Taiman could barely see the top. Soft light came from everywhere and nowhere at once. In the center of the room stood the aliens. Taiman had seen pictures, but seeing them in person was different. The coalition beings were tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow from within. Their movements were smooth and flowing, like dancers. But what struck him most was how they all looked similar. Perfect features, bright eyes, and an aura of confidence that filled the room. At the center of the group stood someone who was clearly important. She was taller than the others, with long silver hair that moved like liquid metal. Her skin glowed brighter than the rest, and when she spoke, everyone listened. "Welcome, beings of Earth," she said in perfect English, though her lips barely moved. The words seemed to appear directly in their minds. "I am Princess Velandra of the Ethereal Coalition. We greet you in peace and curiosity." Park So-ra stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Your Highness, we are honored by your presence. I am Ambassador Park So-ra, representing the United Earth Government." The princess smiled, and several of the human team members seemed to freeze for a moment, clearly impressed by her beauty. Taiman glanced up briefly, nodded politely, then returned to organizing his papers. The formal introductions continued. Each human team member was presented to the princess and other coalition members. When they reached Taiman, Ambassador So-ra said, "This is Jin Taiman, our trade and resources specialist." Taiman looked up, made brief eye contact with the princess, and said, "Your Highness." Then he immediately looked back at his tablet, checking the trade route data one more time. Princess Velandra paused for just a moment, as if expecting something, more than moved on to the next introduction. The negotiations began in earnest the next day. The meeting room was smaller but just as impressive, with a large round table that seemed to be carved from a single piece of crystal. The coalition had brought their own specialists, beings who could apparently calculate complex equations in their heads and communicate without speaking. Ambassador Quintar, the coalition's chief negotiator, began with a long speech about the benefits of joining their trade network. The coalition controls 17 star systems with over 40 habitable worlds. Our technology can extend human life by centuries. Our ships can cross the galaxy in weeks instead of years. The human team listened carefully, asking questions and taking notes. Taiman was busy studying the star charts they provided, making calculations about shipping times and cargo capacities. Throughout the morning, he noticed something odd. Several times when he looked up from his work, he caught Princess Velandra watching him. Not watching the negotiations or the other humans, but specifically watching him. When their eyes met, she would quickly look away. During lunch break, Kim Nari pulled him aside. "Taemin, you need to be more respectful to the princess." "What do you mean?" he asked, genuinely confused. "You barely acknowledge her presence. In their culture, someone of her status expects a certain level of attention. The others have been stealing glances at her all morning, but you act like she's not even there." Taemin frowned. "I'm here to work, not stare at people. Isn't it more respectful to focus on the negotiations?" Kim Nari sighed. "Just try to be more aware of cultural differences, okay?" The afternoon session was about resource sharing. Taemin had to present his analysis of what Earth could offer in trade. He stood at the front of the room with his charts and graphs explaining shipping routes and resource extraction rates. As he spoke, he noticed Princess Velandra leaning forward slightly, listening intently to his words. Unlike the morning when she seemed distracted, now she was completely focused on his presentation. Her bright eyes followed his movements as he pointed to different star systems on the map. When he finished, she asked several detailed questions about Earth's mining operations and agricultural capacity. Her questions were smart and showed she understood complex economic principles. "Your analysis is very thorough," she said. "You clearly put much thought into this." "Thank you, Your Highness. I believe accurate data leads to better decisions for everyone." For the first time, he saw her smile genuinely instead of the formal diplomatic smile she had been using all day. That evening, as the human team prepared for dinner in their quarters, Lee Do-hyun mentioned something interesting. "I was talking to one of their guards. He said the princess has never asked so many questions during negotiations before. Usually she just listens and lets her advisors handle the details." Park Sora looked thoughtful. "She seemed particularly interested in Taemin's presentation." Taemin shrugged. "Maybe she likes numbers and facts. Some people find them more reliable than smooth words." What he didn't know was that in her own quarters, Princess Velandra was having a very different conversation with her advisors. She was asking questions that had never occurred to her before, questions about the human who seemed to see something other than her appearance when he looked at her. The real negotiations were just beginning. 3 days into the negotiations, Princess Velandra found herself doing something she had never done before, thinking about a being who didn't seem to think about her. Every species she had ever met showed the same reaction when they first saw her. Their eyes would widen, their breathing would change, and they would stare as if seeing something beyond their understanding. The coalition had spent generations perfecting their appearance, and she was considered the most beautiful of them all. But Jin Taemin was different. During meetings, he would glance at her when she spoke, nod respectfully, and then return his attention to his work. It was polite, but distant, as if her appearance meant nothing to him at all. "Your Highness," Ambassador Quintar said during their private morning briefing, "the human negotiations are going well, but I must express concern about your fascination with their trade specialist." Velandra turned from the large window where she had been watching Earth's sun in the distance. "Fascination is too strong a word. I am simply curious about their different customs." "Be careful, Princess. Humans are unpredictable. They don't have the refined culture of the coalition. Their reactions cannot be trusted." She nodded, but her thoughts remained on the quiet human who treated her like any other person in the room. That evening, the coalition hosted a formal reception for the human delegation. The main hall was decorated with floating lights that danced in patterns above their heads. Soft music played from crystals embedded in the walls. The humans arrived wearing their best formal clothes, though they looked simple compared to the flowing robes of the coalition members. Taemin wore a plain black suit and carried a small notebook, even to the party. Princess Velandra moved through the crowd, speaking with various diplomats and officials. She wore a gown that seemed to be made of captured starlight, and wherever she went, conversations paused as beings stopped to admire her. She watched Taemin from across the room. He was standing near a large display showing star charts, studying them carefully, while sipping a glass of water. Other humans in the area kept glancing at her, then quickly looking away when they thought she might notice. But Taemin remained, focused on the charts. Park Sora approached her with a nervous smile. Your Highness, thank you for this wonderful reception. Your hospitality has been exceptional. You are most welcome, Ambassador Park. How are your people finding the station? Very impressive. Though I think Taman there would be happy if we had more technical displays like that star chart. He loves studying navigation data. Princess Velandra looked at the human engineer again. Does he always work, even at social gatherings? He's very dedicated. Sometimes I think he forgets there's a world beyond his calculations. Park Sora laughed gently. But his work is excellent. We couldn't have prepared for these negotiations without his analysis. The princess excused herself and walked slowly toward the star chart display. As she approached, she could hear Tai Min muttering quietly to himself about shipping routes and fuel calculations. The northern passage through the Vega system would be more efficient, she said softly. He looked up, surprised. Your Highness, I didn't see you there. He started to bow, but she raised a hand to stop him. Please, no need for ceremony. You were saying something about the northern route? Well, yes. If these charts are accurate, ships could save almost 30% on travel time by using the Vega system instead of the southern route through Arcturus. The charts are accurate. That route has been used by coalition traders for decades. She moved closer to the display. But there are asteroid fields that can be dangerous for ships without proper navigation systems. Earth ships have good navigation systems, Taman said confidently. Our pilots are trained to handle difficult conditions. They talked for several minutes about shipping routes and navigation challenges. Princess Velandra found herself enjoying the conversation in a way she rarely did at formal events. Taman spoke to her as if she were any expert discussing technical matters, not as if she were a precious object to be admired. Around them, the reception continued, but several beings had begun to notice the princess spending time in deep conversation with the human. Whispers started to spread through the crowd. General Morthak, the coalition's military commander, watched from across the room with growing concern. He moved closer, pretending to examine the refreshment table nearby. You seem to know a great deal about navigation, Taman was saying. Did you study engineering? In a way. I have been present at many trade negotiations. One learns things by listening carefully. That's smart. Most people don't realize how much you can learn by just paying attention. Princess Velandra felt something shift inside her chest. When was the last time someone had called her smart instead of beautiful? When had anyone suggested she was capable of learning technical subjects? The moment was interrupted by a gentle cough from Ambassador Quintar, who had approached without them noticing. Your Highness, there are other guests who would like to meet you. Of course. She turned back to Tai Min. Thank you for the interesting discussion about shipping routes. Thank you, Your Highness. I hope we can continue working together on the trade agreements. As she walked away, Princess Velandra realized something was bothering her. Throughout their entire conversation, Taman had looked directly at her face when speaking, maintained respectful eye contact, but had never once let his gaze wander over her appearance the way others did. He had been completely focused on their discussion. The realization grew into a question that she couldn't ignore. An hour later, as the reception was winding down, Princess Velandra made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She approached the center of the room where both delegations were gathered for closing remarks. Before we conclude this evening, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the hall, I have a question for one of our human guests. The room fell completely silent. Even the background music seemed to fade. Jin Taman of Earth, she said, formally. Taman looked up in surprise, clearly not expecting to be addressed publicly. Yes, Your Highness? I have observed something during our time together, and I am curious about your behavior. Ambassador Park Sora took a step forward, ready to intervene if needed, but Princess Velandra continued. I have noticed that while others regard me with... She paused, choosing her words carefully. With obvious appreciation for my appearance, you never truly look at me in that way. Your attention seems to be elsewhere, on your work, on our conversations, but not on... me. Why is this so? The silence in the room became complete. Taemin could feel dozens of eyes watching him, waiting for his answer. He could see the worry on Park Sora's face, the suspicion on General Morthak's face, and the genuine curiosity on Princess Velandra's face. He took a breath and gave the only answer he could: the truth. Your Highness, in my culture, we believe that truly seeing someone requires more than looking at how they appear on the outside. Over the past few days, I have been listening to your words, watching how you make decisions, and learning about your character through our conversations. You are clearly intelligent, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in finding solutions that work for everyone. That seemed more important and more respectful than staring at you. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Princess Velandra stared at him, her glowing eyes wide with something that looked almost like shock. You have been observing my character? She asked quietly. Yes, Your Highness. And I've been impressed by what I've seen. For the first time in her life, Princess Velandra didn't know what to say. No being had ever told her that her thoughts and decisions were more impressive than her appearance. No one had ever suggested that. Her character was worth studying. General Morthak stepped forward, his expression dark. How dare you suggest that the princess's divine beauty is less important than— General, Princess Velandra said sharply, surprising everyone with the command in her voice. The human answered my question honestly. That is what I requested. She looked back at Taemin with new eyes that were beginning to see herself differently. Thank you for your honesty, Jin Taemin. Your answer has given me much to consider. As the reception ended and beings began to leave, Princess Velandra stood alone for a moment, thinking about what it might mean to be valued for something other than the beauty she had been born with. Everything was about to change. The morning after the reception, Princess Velandra did something she had never done before. She requested a private meeting with a diplomat from another species, not for politics or ceremony, but because she wanted to understand something that confused her. You want to meet with the human engineer? Ambassador Quintar asked, clearly worried. Princess, this is highly unusual. Private meetings are typically reserved for heads of state or urgent matters. Consider this urgent, she replied firmly. I wish to learn more about human culture and thinking. This will help our negotiations succeed. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. Taemin received the invitation with surprise. Kim Nari helped him prepare, coaching him on proper diplomatic behavior. Remember, she's royalty, Nari said as she adjusted his formal jacket. Address her as Your Highness and let her guide the conversation. Don't interrupt and try to look at her when she speaks. I always look at people when they speak, Taemin protested. You know what I mean. The meeting room was smaller than the main conference hall, with comfortable chairs and a large window showing the stars. When Taemin arrived, Princess Velandra was standing at the window, no longer wearing her formal gowns. Instead, she wore a simple robe that still glowed softly, but seemed more practical than decorative. Thank you for meeting with me, she said, turning from the window. Please sit wherever you are comfortable. Taemin chose a chair near the window. How can I help you, Your Highness? I want to understand something you said yesterday. You mentioned that humans believe in truly seeing someone. What does this mean? Taemin thought for a moment. Well, anyone can look at someone and see their height, their hair color, whether they're wearing expensive clothes. But truly seeing someone means understanding who they are as a person, their thoughts, their values, how they treat others, what they care about. And you believe this is more important than other qualities? Yes. Physical appearance can change or fade, but a person's character is who they really are. Princess Velandra sat down across from him, looking genuinely puzzled. In coalition society, we are taught that beauty and mental power are the highest virtues. Those who possess them lead and others follow. It has always been this way. But what about kindness, intelligence, hard work, creativity? Taemin asked. Don't those matter too? I have never thought about this. She was quiet for a moment. Tell me about your leaders on Earth. How are they chosen? Different ways in different places, but usually people vote for who they think will make the best decisions. Sometimes we make mistakes and choose poorly, but we keep trying to do better. People vote, even those who are not beautiful or telepathic. Everyone gets to vote regardless of how they look or what abilities they have. We learned a long time ago that good ideas can come from anyone. Princess Valandra leaned back in her chair, clearly struggling with these concepts. But how do you judge if someone is worthy of leadership without seeing their beauty or testing their mental powers? We watch how they behave. Do they keep their promises? Do they treat others fairly? Do they work hard to solve problems? Do they admit when they make mistakes and try to fix them? You judge people by their actions? Mostly, yes. We have a saying. Actions speak louder than words. It means what people do is more important than what they say they'll do. The princess was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the stars. I have never been judged by my actions, she said finally. Since birth, I have been told that my value comes from my appearance and my bloodline. I have been trained to look beautiful and speak diplomatically, but no one has ever asked me what I think about important matters. What do you think about important matters? Taemin asked gently. The question seemed to surprise her. I don't know. I have opinions, but I was taught that they didn't matter as long as I could represent the coalition properly in public. Your opinions matter, Taemin said firmly. Yesterday, when we talked about shipping routes, you had valuable knowledge and good insights. That came from your mind, not your appearance. Princess Valandra looked at him with something like wonder. You really listened to what I said about the Vega system? Of course. It was useful information that could save time and resources. Why wouldn't I listen? Because... She paused, then continued more quietly. Because most beings are too distracted by how I look to pay attention to my words. That's their loss, Taemin said simply. And it's probably your loss too if no one ever asked for your real thoughts. Over the following days, Princess Valandra requested several more cultural exchange meetings. She was curious about everything. How humans raise their children, how they solve disagreements, how they decided what was right and wrong. On Earth, Taemin explained during one conversation, we have many different ideas about beauty. What one person finds attractive, another might not. But we've learned that friendship and love work best when they're based on understanding each other's minds and hearts. You choose partners based on character rather than breeding? She asked, fascinated. Both can matter, but character is more important for a lasting relationship. Physical attraction might bring people together, but shared values and mutual respect keep them together. The princess began to change in small ways. She started asking more questions during negotiations, offering her own ideas instead of just agreeing with her advisors. She requested technical documents to study in her spare time. She even asked Taemin to teach her some basic engineering principles. Why do you want to learn this? He asked as they worked through calculations together. Because I want to understand how things work, not just how they look, she replied. For my entire life, I have been told that my role is to be beautiful and represent my people. But what if I could actually help my people by understanding problems and solutions? Other coalition members began to notice the changes. Some found them refreshing. The princess seemed more engaged and interesting than before. But others, particularly those in positions of power, grew concerned. General Morthak was especially worried. He spoke privately with Ambassador Quintar about his concerns. The princess is changing too much too quickly, he said. These humans are influencing her in ways that could be dangerous to our social order. She seems happier, Quintar observed. More confident. Exactly. She is beginning to think she has value beyond her royal bloodline and appearance. This kind of thinking could spread to others. What happens to our society if everyone starts believing they can judge leaders by actions instead of breeding? Meanwhile, Princess Valandra was making a discovery that would change everything. While studying in the Coalition archives late one night, looking for historical trade agreements to better understand the negotiations, she found something unexpected. Buried in ancient records, she discovered documents from the early days of The coalition, before the beauty-based hierarchy existed. The original coalition had been founded by 7 species working together as equals, making decisions based on wisdom and capability rather than appearance. The beauty-focused society she had grown up in wasn't ancient tradition at all. It had been created deliberately by a small group of rulers who wanted to maintain power, by convincing everyone that some beings were naturally superior to others. She sat in the dark archive room, staring at proof that her entire world was built on lies designed to keep people like her in power while limiting everyone else's potential. For the first time in her life, Princess Velandra understood what Taemin meant about the difference between appearance and character. And she realized that she had a choice to make about who she wanted to be. The question was, would she have the courage to act on what she had learned? As she gathered the ancient documents, she didn't notice the security camera recording her activities, or the fact that someone else was watching her late-night research with growing alarm. Princess Velandra couldn't sleep after discovering the ancient documents. She spent the entire night reading through records that painted a completely different picture of coalition history than what she had been taught. The original coalition had been founded by 7 species who came together as equals after a devastating war nearly destroyed them all. They had created a system where leaders were chosen based on wisdom, problem-solving ability, and their commitment to serving others. Physical appearance and telepathic power were considered useful traits, but no more important than creativity, kindness, or technical skill. But 300 years ago, a group of exceptionally beautiful and telepathically gifted individuals had slowly taken control. They convinced the population that physical perfection and mental powers were signs of divine favor, and that those who possessed these traits were naturally meant to rule. Over generations, they had rewritten history and restructured society to maintain their power. The documents showed that many talented beings had been pushed aside simply because they weren't beautiful enough or didn't have the right mental abilities. Scientific advances had slowed, innovation had declined. The coalition had become stagnant, focused more on maintaining appearances than solving real problems. Princess Velandra realized that she was a direct product of this system, bred and trained to be beautiful and compliant, never encouraged to develop her mind or question anything. The next morning, she requested an urgent meeting with Taemin. She looked exhausted but determined when he arrived. "I need to show you something," she said without preamble. "But first, I need to ask you a question. If you discovered that everything you had been taught about your society was a lie designed to keep certain people in power, what would you do?" Taemin sat down slowly, sensing the weight of her question. "That's a serious situation. I suppose I would want to understand the full truth first, then figure out how to help fix the problem. Even if fixing it meant giving up privileges you had enjoyed your whole life. Especially then, keeping unfair advantages isn't really living. It's just pretending." Princess Velandra spread the ancient documents across the table. "Then I need your help." For the next hour, she walked him through her discoveries. Taemin listened with growing amazement and concern as she explained how the coalition's entire social structure was built on manufactured lies. "This is incredible," he said, finally. "And terrible. How many brilliant people have been ignored because they weren't pretty enough? How many good ideas were never heard?" "Exactly. And now I understand why your way of thinking seemed so strange to me. Humans naturally do what the coalition was supposed to do, judge people by their character and abilities. What are you going to do with this information?" Princess Velandra took a deep breath. "I want to change things. Gradually, carefully, but meaningfully. The current trade negotiations could be a starting point. Instead of the usual hierarchy-based agreements, we could create something new. Partnerships based on merit and mutual benefit. That would be revolutionary. Yes, and dangerous. There are many powerful beings who benefit from the current system. They won't want to see it change." Taemin nodded thoughtfully. "On Earth, we've learned that the best way to create lasting change is through education and example. Show people a better way works, and eventually they'll want it for themselves." Over the next few days, they worked together to develop a proposal. Instead of the traditional coalition trade agreement where Earth would essentially become a junior partner paying tribute to their superior alien neighbors. They designed a true partnership where both species would contribute their strengths and share benefits equally. The proposal included cultural exchange programs, joint research projects, and shared decision-making processes. Most importantly, it established that individual merit and contribution would determine a person's role in the partnership, not their species, appearance, or inherited status. Princess Velandra presented their ideas to Ambassador Quintar and the rest of the coalition negotiating team. The reaction was mixed. "This is very unusual," Quintar said carefully. "The coalition has never entered into agreements with other species as equals." "Perhaps it's time we started," the princess replied confidently. Some of the younger coalition members seemed intrigued by the ideas, but the older, more traditional members looked uncomfortable. General Morthak was openly hostile. "Princess, with respect, this proposal abandons thousands of years of coalition tradition. We are superior to humans in technology, lifespan, and mental capabilities. Why should we treat them as equals?" "Because they have qualities we lack," she answered firmly. "They have innovation, adaptability, and social systems that bring out the best in their people. We could learn from them, just as they could learn from us." "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Morthak muttered to his aide, loud enough for others to hear. That evening, Taemin found a message waiting in his quarters requesting a private meeting with General Morthak. He was suspicious but agreed, thinking it might be an opportunity to address the general's concerns. The meeting was in a small conference room in the military section of the station. When Taemin arrived, Morthak was waiting with two other coalition officers. "Thank you for coming," Morthak said, though his tone was anything but thankful. "I want to discuss your influence on Princess Velandra." "I'm not sure what you mean, General. Don't pretend to be innocent. You have been filling her head with dangerous ideas about equality and merit-based society. She was perfectly content with her role before you arrived." "Maybe she was content, or maybe she just never had anyone ask her what she really thought," Taemin replied. Morthak's eyes flashed with anger. "You are corrupting a princess of the coalition with your primitive human concepts. This ends now." "I'm sorry, but the princess requested our meetings. I can't stop her from asking questions if she wants to learn." "Yes, you can. You will tell her that you made a mistake, that human ideas are inferior, and that she should return to her proper role. If I don't, what? Then I will be forced to conclude that humans are a dangerous influence on coalition society. The negotiations will end, and your people will be declared enemies of the coalition. Is your pride worth starting? A war?" Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. The general was serious. "You're asking me to lie to the princess and convince her to stop thinking for herself. I'm asking you to save both our species from unnecessary conflict." Before Taemin could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, and a voice announced over the communication system, "Security breach in Section 7. All personnel evacuate immediately." "What's happening?" Taemin asked. General Morthak looked surprised but quickly recovered. "It appears there's been some kind of accident or attack. We should evacuate." But as they moved toward the door, Taemin caught something in the general's expression, a flicker of satisfaction that didn't match his words of concern. The evacuation was chaotic. Beings from both species hurried through corridors, following evacuation procedures. Taemin was separated from the coalition officers in the crowd and found himself near the human quarters, where he ran into Park Sora. "What's going on?" she asked. "I don't know, but I have a bad feeling about this. Where are the other team members?" Lee Do-hyun is helping with evacuation procedures, and Kim Nari is in the communication center trying to contact Earth. But Taemin, I can't find Princess Velandra anywhere. That's when Taemin realized what was really happening. The emergency wasn't an accident. It was a setup. And somehow, Princess Velandra had figured it out too. In the chaos of the evacuation, she had made her way to the station's central communication array. When Morthak's people found her there, she was transmitting copies of the ancient documents to coalition worlds throughout the galaxy. Step away from the communication system, Your Highness, General Morthak commanded as his officers surrounded her. The truth is already spreading, General, she said calmly. 7 coalition worlds have received the historical records. By tomorrow, thousands more will have seen them. You have no idea what you've done. You've destroyed the stability that has kept our society peaceful for centuries. I've given our people a choice about what kind of society they want to live in, just like the humans do. As security forces moved in to arrest the princess, alarms began sounding from coalition ships docked at the station. Not emergency alarms, communication alarms, as messages began flooding in from coalition worlds that had received the historical documents. The revolution had begun, not with weapons or violence, but with information and the simple idea that everyone deserved to be judged by their character rather than their appearance. General Morthak's plan to maintain control was falling apart, but he had one last desperate move to make. The communication center had become the most important room on the station. Princess Velandra stood calmly in the middle of a circle of General Morthak's security officers, even as messages continued flooding in from across coalition space. Princess, you have committed treason against the coalition, Morthak declared. You have spread classified documents and created chaos throughout our territories. I have shared historical truth with people who deserve to know it, she replied steadily. The documents weren't classified, they were hidden. There's a difference. On the communication screens around them, reports were streaming in. On Coalition, world's beings who had never seen the original founding documents were reading them for the first time. Some were angry at being lied to for generations. Others were excited about the possibility of change. Many were simply confused, trying to understand what it all meant. Look at what you've done. Morthak gestured at the screens. You've created instability and division. People are questioning their leaders, abandoning their assigned roles. Society is falling apart. Society is waking up, Princess Velandra corrected, and it's beautiful. Taemin and the human delegation had been escorted to the communication center under guard, officially for their safety during the emergency, but really so Morthak could keep them contained. Taemin watched the princess with admiration. She had found the courage to risk everything for what she believed was right. General Morthak, Park Sora said formally, what are the charges against Princess Velandra, and under what authority are you detaining her? She has violated coalition, security protocols, and endangered social stability. Who gave you the authority to arrest a member of the royal family? Morthak hesitated for just a moment. The Coalition Council has granted me emergency powers to restore order. I would like to verify that with the Council directly, Park Sora requested. Communications with the Council are restricted during this emergency. Kim Nari, who had been monitoring the communication feeds, looked up with interest. General, I'm seeing reports from 17 coalition worlds requesting direct communication with Princess Velandra. They want to hear her explanation of the historical documents. Those communications are denied. The princess is under arrest and cannot make public statements. Under arrest for what exactly? Princess Velandra asked. For sharing our own history, for telling the truth? Before Morthak could answer, one of the communication screens activated on its own. The face of an elderly coalition being appeared. Someone Taemin didn't recognize, but whose presence made all the coalition officers stand straighter. General Morthak, the being said in a voice heavy with authority. I am Council Member Yarthion, speaking on behalf of the full coalition. Council, we have received numerous reports about events on Harmony's Edge. Explain your actions. Morthak's confidence wavered. Council Member, I am containing a security situation caused by Princess Velandra's unauthorized release of classified materials. The materials in question are historical documents from the Coalition archives. They are not classified, they are simply old. Why were they not available to the public previously? They were deemed potentially disruptive to social order. By whom? The general struggled for an answer. On screen, Council Member Yarthion waited patiently. By previous leadership, concerned about stability, Morthak finally said. I see. And you decided to arrest a princess of the Coalition for sharing historical truth with our people? The princess has been influenced by human ideas that threaten our social structure. Princess Velandra stepped forward. Council Member Yartheon, I request permission to address the council directly. Permission granted, Your Highness. She moved to face the communication screen. Honored council members, I have indeed been influenced by human ideas. Ideas about judging people by their character and abilities rather than their appearance or bloodline. I shared our historical documents because I believe our people deserve to know that the coalition was originally founded on these same principles. You believe the coalition should abandon its current social structure? I believe the coalition should allow its people to choose what kind of society they want to live in, based on complete information about their history and their options. Timon watched in fascination as the princess spoke with growing confidence and clarity. This was not the uncertain being who had first asked him why he didn't stare at her. This was someone who had discovered her own voice and wasn't afraid to use it. More council members appeared on additional screens as the full council convened in emergency session. The communication center had become the site of a historic moment, a princess arguing for the right of her people to choose their own destiny. General Morthak, Council Member Yartheon said after Princess Velandra finished her statement, "Release the princess immediately. There are no grounds for detention." But Council Member, the social discussion, Yartheon corrected firmly. People talking about their society and their history is not disruption. It's democracy. Release her now. The security officers stepped back, clearly confused about their orders. General Morthak looked defeated but still dangerous. "This is a mistake," he said quietly. "You're destroying everything we've built. We're rebuilding it on a better foundation," Princess Velandra replied. Over the following days, the station became the center of the greatest political transformation in coalition history. Representatives from coalition worlds arrived to join the discussions. Some supported the traditional hierarchy, others demanded immediate change, and many fell somewhere in between. The trade negotiations between humans and the coalition transformed into something much larger, a constitutional convention to redesign coalition society. Princess Velandra emerged as a leader of the reform movement, working with moderate council members and progressive representatives from various worlds. Her partnership with Taemin continued, but now it was part of a larger team including humans and coalition beings working together. "I never expected to become a revolutionary," she said to Taemin during a break between sessions. "You're not a revolutionary," he replied. "You're an evolutionist. You're helping your society grow into what it was always meant to be." The final agreement took weeks to negotiate. The new coalition charter established that all beings, regardless of species, appearance, or inherited abilities, would be evaluated based on their contributions and character. Leadership positions would be earned through demonstrated competence and commitment to serving others. Physical beauty and telepathic powers were acknowledged as valuable traits, but no more important than intelligence, creativity, hard work, or compassion. The coalition would actively seek out and develop talent from all backgrounds, not just the traditionally privileged. The trade agreement between Earth and the coalition became the first treaty signed under the new principles, a true partnership between equals, with shared benefits and responsibilities. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Princess Velandra requested one final private meeting with Taemin. "I want to thank you," she said. "Not just for answering my question that night, but for helping me discover who I really am." "You did the discovering," Taemin replied. "I just asked you what you thought about things." That was revolutionary all by itself. No one had ever asked me that before. "Will you be happy with all these changes? You're giving up a lot of privilege and special treatment." Princess Velandra smiled, not the formal diplomatic smile she had worn when they first met, but a genuine expression of satisfaction and hope. "I'm gaining something much more valuable, the chance to earn respect through my actions and to help build a society where everyone has that same chance." 6 months later, Taemin received a message from the reformed coalition. Princess Velandra had been elected to the new coalition council, not because of her royal bloodline, But because of her work in establishing the new governmental system and her efforts to create educational programs that would help beings develop their potential regardless of their background. The message included a photo from the new coalition, Academy, where young beings from all species were studying together, humans working alongside coalition members, learning from each other, and preparing to build a better future. At the bottom of the message was a personal note. Thank you for seeing me before I learned to see myself. The revolution continues one conversation at a time. Taemin smiled as he looked at the photo. In the background, he could see a star chart similar to the one where he and the princess had first talked about shipping routes. But now, instead of one person studying it alone, there was a mixed group of young humans and coalition beings working together, mapping new paths through the galaxy. The future looked brighter than anyone had imagined when that first diplomatic mission began. Sometimes the smallest actions, like treating someone as an individual worth knowing rather than an object to admire, could change everything. And sometimes, the greatest revolutions began with a simple question. Why don't you look at me the way others do? The answer had indeed changed everything.